Today, by request, we are looking at a deck that houses, given the right set of circumstances, the most powerful monster in the game, Fabled Unicore. Unfortunately for Unicore, the recent year has been a hard one, with the game becoming more and more explosive, with more of those annoying plus X, where X is greater than 4, 2 or 3 card combos, as well as Master Rule 4 taking down some of the explosiveness of its own deck. Overall, one of the more annoying problems with Unicore decks is the understandable requirement of a Fabled tuner in its summons, and for the most part, the arsenal of Fabled tuners are less than impressive. Fortunately, due to the beast typing of the more reliable tuners, Unicore builds commonly gravitated towards beast-centric builds that utilize some solid secondary plays involving Obedient Schooled, Valerifawn, and the Raccoon Brothers, along with number 64. However, unfortunately, with the rise of Master Rule 4 and the general lack of quality Link Beast type monsters, as Mrs. Radiant really is the only good one of the two for a certain fire attribute that will remain nameless, is pretty much worthless as there are so few beast fire monsters that are actually useful. This limitation has changed the explosiveness of the common beast-centric Fabled Unicore deck, for it was really not uncommon to make a Unicore plus a pair of Ronins off the back of an Obedient Schooled, and a few other common cards. Now, good luck making that. Also, the explosiveness of other decks have created some additional holes in the negation ability of Unicore, making it a little easier for good players to play around Unicore. So while these problems are annoying, they are not insurmountable from a playability standpoint. Or are they? Can Unicore find a home to reassert its place as one of the most powerful and game-changing monsters in the game, despite most people completely forgetting it exists in the first place? Let's find out. Right away, I think it's important to note that for this initial build, I play a go second type deck because with the explosive and recovery nature of opposing meta decks, it is difficult to go first and receive significant utility from Unicore because you don't know what your opponent's typically playing. Your opponent is going to have a starting hand difference that's going to keep Unicore on the sidelines, as it were, a vast majority of the time. For example, most of the time, putting Unicore on the field is going to take 2 cards. If you go first, if you don't do anything else, well, you've got 3 cards in your hand, your opponent opens with 6, yeah, it's not going to go well. If you go second, it helps you identify the hand mark the deck needs to hit to negate. And with Unicore's effect being continuous, the second he hits the field successfully, anything your opponent attempts to do will be neutralized as long as the hands remain the same. Now, with the near arrival of one of the worst conceived ideas in Yu-Gi-Oh history, although Konami has been, in my opinion, been having a number of those in the last year or so, the Troymeres, or Nightmares in the TCG nomenclature, pure fables, may see a resurgence. But with reference to Unicore itself, Troymeres don't do much to aid that build direction. More or less, Fabled Troymere slash Fabled Nightmare is pretty much just going to be Nightmare spam, not Nightmares plus Unicore. With that said, for one of the 2 different types of Unicore decks we're going to look at today, I still favor the Beast-Fabled hybrid over the pure build. To that end, for the Fabled portion of the build, I run 3 copies of the Fabled Cerburrel, the best tuner of the Fabled bunch, because it can special summon itself when it's discarded by any means, 3 copies of the Fabled Ganashia, a solid hitter that can be easily special summoned in this particular deck build, and 1 copy of the Fabled Chawa as a secondary tuner support. Chawa is nice with its innate special summoning ability, but because this deck isn't brimming full of Fabled, that innate special summoning ability can be inefficient and not applicable at times. For the beast portion of the monsters, I run 3 copies of the newly freed Rescue Cat, which is a 1-card Unicore, or an Achuria Beast if you feel that's the better choice for whatever deck you're facing, 2 copies of Valerifawn, for its revival ability helps some basic extra deck playmaking and can expand your plays with its discard depending exactly on what you discard, and then some Earth Beasts for some nice tricks that they can pull off themselves or just be targets for Obedient Schooled, and 2 copies of Wind-Up Kitten for bouncing and some board breaking when you are able to put it on the field with its effect active, and 1 copy of Kalantosa for removal via Fawn Summoning. I don't run either of the Raccoon Brothers in this deck this time around because they've just come off as too slow for this type of format, and making double Ronin under Master Rule 4 is just far too inconsistent. Finally, closing out the monsters, because this deck is designed to go second, I run 4 different Kaijus, 1 Jizukiru, 1 Gameciel, 1 Radian, and 1 Kumongous. Also, I run 1 copy of Glow Up Bulb as a discard target, tuner, and extra link body because it's Earth, so it can help you make Mrs. Radiant. An interesting tech choice in this deck is a singular copy of Clear Effector, which can net a draw and prevent the new Synchro summoned monster from being destroyed by card effects. Effector is one of those cards I feel that just got released in the wrong time period. It just got released too late in the quote-unquote extra deck cycle that people kind of forgot that it was actually good. I run a golden oldie for this deck in 1 copy of The Tricky. Works nicely for some higher level synchro plays, as well as making a proxy dragon. Finally, I run 1 copy of Performapal Hip Hippo as an earth monster that can be freely summoned via Carnival to help with extra deck plays, or even put up a big defensive token wall. For the spells, going second, there is incentive to run a number of spell-based board clearers. I run 1 copy of Raigeki, 1 copy of Dark Hole, 1 copy of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, and 2 copies of Lightning Vortex. I run some draw power in 1 copy of Upstart Goblin and 3 copies of Dark World Dealings. The discards from Dealings and Vortex are obviously not that big of a deal for this particular deck. With the Beast component, I run the obvious 3 copies of Obedient Schooled. It is noteworthy that with the Beast count of this current deck, the 3rd copy of Obedient Schooled more than likely will be wasted due to a lack of material, but such a circumstance is quite rare, and with all the discarding element, you can just typically discard that unactivatable 3rd copy for something else. I run Revival in the form of 1 copy of Monster Reborn and 1 copy of Ayers Rock Sunrise. Finally, I run 2 copies of the aforementioned Super Hippo Carnival for Hippo summoning and defensive measures when necessary. Unfortunately, those tokens don't allow you to play with the extra deck, but they can put up a big wall that at times could frustrate opponents, forcing them potentially to overextend and walk right into one of your board clearers. Closing out the deck, I run 1 copy of Solemn Judgment. Now, one of the most obvious elements of this build that differs from the common perception of Unicore decks is the lack of controller spell speed to hand manipulators, like Reckless Greed and card traps, various hand traps, etc., in the idea of I'm going to try to activate this card during my opponent's turn, match my hand size with the hand size my opponent currently has, and negate whatever they're doing right now in the field, plus have additional negation power. Right now, my mindset with regards to Unicore is it's just too difficult to win by attempting to match negate when the opponent has 3+ cards in the hand, especially because of all the graveyard manipulation that's also available in the game now. I believe the goal of the deck really needs to be forcing the opponent to spend cards from hand, shrinking the hand size to 2 or less, making matching and negation much easier. And I feel this strategy is much better accomplished by using board wipe rather than draw-based cards like Reckless Greed, Jar of Greed, etc. Now, hand traps are always an option, especially for decks that have a go second type mentality. But for those familiar with the way I deck build, I always build first without using hand traps because I feel it's a lot easier for viewers to add in their preferred hand traps after they see the completed non-hand trap build versus trying to play with certain hand traps initially and then what do you take out, what do you put in. As mentioned with the go second mindset, hand traps are definitely warranted if so desired. More than likely, if you prefer hand traps, I'd probably replace the Kaijus because if you replace other things, you're hurting your own inherent Fabled Unicorn and playmaking potential. And there are a lot of other better decks you can run if you just want to run hand traps and kind of a more pure stunny type build where I win by not letting my opponent do anything. This is supposed to become a Fabled Unicorn build, so there should be some level of emphasis on actually summoning Unicorn. For the extra deck, I run 1 Leo, Keeper of the Sacred Tree, Clear Effector plus a level 8 Kaiju, Leo that can't be destroyed by card effects, can't be targeted by anything other than a particular main phase 2, 3100 attack. Sounds pretty good. 1 Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, 1 Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, 1 Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend, 1 Clear Wing Synchro Dragon, 1 Fabled Radian, 1 Naturia Beast, 2 the Fabled Unicore, 1 the Fabled Kudabi, 1 Sky Cavalry Centuria, 1 number 64 Ronin Raccoon, 2 Mrs. Radiant, 1 Proxy Dragon. Moving on to the second build, for those interested in another strategy that doesn't use pure Fables or doesn't use a Beast-Fabled hybrid, Fabled with a Unicore focus actually has some interesting synergy with DDDs. While I'm not going to go over the particular build currently on the screen right now in strict detail, the hybrid is interesting because it does have a more explosive nature in addition to commonly having a stronger go first capacity. It is not uncommon for this deck to field an Electromite or Decode, depending on exactly what's in your hand, a Siegfried, Unicorn, and a Proxy Dragon in a single turn. The disadvantage of this build is that you will not see Unicorn on the field as much as you will in the, feature build that we had here in this discussion, and you can't play going second as easily. Overall, which build is better? I think the DDD hybrid is a little better, but again, it takes away a little of that Fabled Unicorn focus. Finally, while I have not investigated it very much, I wonder if there is some interesting matchmaking between a Fabled Unicorn build and a Banished Psychic build, due to the effects of Wizard, Cleric, and Esper Girl in a Link Summoned world. Could be interesting. Overall, Fabled Unicore is a tough deck to run, not only due to the experience and general intelligence that you need to have to actually run it. It is a brainy deck, just not learn 1 or 2 big combos, hope to go first, spit out big combo, win. It's more complicated than that. But also because it probably is the deck that's most affected in build strategy regarding whether or not it goes first or second, which can be rather frustrating. For example, if you knew you were going first, one might be more inclined to run cards in the main deck like Drag Down to the Grave, look at your opponent's hand, get rid of their best combo card to snuff out their playmaking potential and optimize Fabled Unicorn's potential to negate, Mind Crush, stop what they just searched, potentially change your hand size to match your opponent, Anti-Spell Fragrance, prevent them from activating spells and going off against you, and enhancing Unicorn's negation ability, and Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, screwing over their next turn, changing your hand size to negate. But these cards are much less valuable when going second, and are almost a liability in a sense, due to the general lack of, oh my god, explosiveness this deck can produce. So the motivation, in a sense, behind going second is that you have a higher probability of actually going second. You know, all right, there's a higher probability that this will happen in turn order because most players want to go first. So instead of a 50% chance at getting that coin flip right, you have a much higher probability, like 80-90% chance of going second, because I win, I'm going to pick going second, my opponent wins, more than likely they're going to say first. Thus, I can design the deck around this. I know I'm going second. I have the efficiency of putting go second cards in there instead of necessarily go first cards. And also, you have the additional benefit of, okay, I know what my opponent's hand is, barring any hand traps. I know what target I need to hit so that Unicore can do some negation. Well, those are my Fabled Unicore builds. Thank you for your attention and your time. I'm out.